In an article published last year by Penn State Law, performative allyship was described as the idea of self-gratification that does not look at your responsibility within a community and is disingenuous. To put it in terms better understood by my friends, family, and peers, it's like Dennis expecting a round of applause for doing what he perceives to be the right thing in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. You don't get a round of applause for doing the bare minimum. Putting a black box in your social media profile, a banner in support of your favorite cause, or the tried and true corporate greed every year that is Pride Month are only a few of many examples of people, groups, or businesses doing the bare minimum without actually having to do that whole activism thing. It can look like a duck, walk like a duck, but if it's barking, it's not a duck, it's a dog. But what, let's be honest, if anything, does this have to do with Romantic Killer? Well, let me put a pin in that for now, because in order for us to dive into the root of the problem, we need to set some groundwork. Written by Momose Wataru, Romantic Killer is the story of Anzu, a teenage girl whose 3 favorite things are her cat, chocolate, and video games. One day, seemingly out of nowhere, a wizard named Riri appears and says that due to the lowered birth rate in Japan, Anzu has been selected to take part in a program to help spur teenage girls into falling in love and having children, so the fairies of the world can have their energy restored. Selfishly, Riri also wants a raise. Anzu, having shown no sign of romantic interest in anyone and who has no desire whatsoever to be forced into the situation, is upset and declines, but Riri forcibly takes away the things that bring her joy, ships her family off to America, and puts her in increasingly stereotypical situations in hopes that her mind will be changed. Little does Riri know that, without her 3 favorite things, Anzu has made it her own personal goal to tank the project and take Riri down with her. While I could go episode by episode or volume by volume, since the manga is only 4 volumes and the anime is only 12 episodes long, it wouldn't exactly be worth the trouble. You see, Romantic Killer is not a dumpster fire. It's also not remarkable either. It's fine. It's decent. It's okay. It's not bad. Much like a lot of series or films that have been mired in controversy, it's a fairly standard series. It's unremarkable, it's middle of the road, and while there are probably going to be a lot of people that enjoy it, there will probably be just as many that don't. Let's be honest, it's a bog-standard rom-com that gets churned out with remarkable frequency nowadays. Honestly, had one of the main characters use teasing as a way to mask their feelings, you could add it to the 8 or so other series that immediately come to mind whenever you think of this. It's trying to be cute by winking at the audience and telling you it's clever, without actually ever being clever. Saying something is a trope, and then doing nothing to subvert it, or its potentially sexist undertones, it's not really a good joke. The only thing it does that's unique is kinda how genuinely mean-spirited it can be. Anzu has no agency in this entire situation. She has no choice, and is being forced into a heteronormative relationship, and to take part in traditionally feminine acts, all against her will. She could be queer, she could be aromantic, she could be asexual, but it doesn't matter, since she needs to become a breeding factory for Japan so fairies can continue to stay strong. To put it another way, there's a difference between pushing your shy friend to talk to the cute guy and pushing their faces together until they kiss. It's gross, and honestly, given a lot of the things that are happening nowadays, it feels oddly dystopian. And the fact that her interests outside of boys are stripped away in hopes she will become a well-adjusted woman just feels sad. Even if she gives in and decides to stop fighting, will any of it actually have been real? Sure, spending time with the guys and getting out there and getting to know them better will obviously help their overall relationship, whether it's romantic or otherwise, and ultimately the truth will come out one way or another, but I can't help but feel that the relationship is beginning on a very, very weird foot when the entire thing is being funded by a money-hungry fairy. I don't know. Maybe I'm looking into this too deeply. And honestly, the series kind of fumbles around this, trying to make it look funny and interesting, but it never gets above a light chuckle every now and again. Even in the end, when it has this weirdly placed, here's hoping I get to make a sequel bait, it doesn't really land. But, I don't know. Like I said, maybe I'm thinking about this too hard, but it's just kind of been in the back of my mind that this whole thing just feels weirdly gross. It also doesn't help that the main source of comedy in the series is Anzu fighting back against Riri, or finding herself in situations where normally she would be the girl, but in this case she's the guy in the standardized tropes. And sometimes it's kind of funny, more often than not it's hit or miss. The love interests and side characters do add some interesting, albeit surface layers, and the whole thing is not painful to read or painful to sit through. But when you really only have one decent joke and it's beaten until the horse has been turned into a fine glue, it can get fairly old. The art also leaves a lot to be desired, but I don't make a habit of picking on artists because I think that's low-hanging fruit. Art is subjective, not objective, and even if I didn't like it, someone out there probably does, and more power to them. I'd rather roast poor industry practices or weird story decisions than art. Regardless, and despite what it may sound like, I didn't hate this series. It's just very forgettable outside of some weird issues and the controversy surrounding it. If you like shonen rom-coms and that's your bread and butter, you'll probably get something out of this and enjoy it. But for me, it seems kind of weird that all this attention is going to a series that is otherwise pretty middle of the road. Now, let me go back and pull that pin out. Remember my speech on performative allyship at the beginning? That wasn't just a thinly veiled stab at companies not caring about trans folks like me. This does tie into Romantic Killer. You see, I believe Romantic Killer is an example of performative Shojo. You can throw all the sparkles, the wide-eyed stares, the stereotypes, the situations and tropes you want at it, but that dog still isn't a duck. It's still gonna bark. It lacks the heart, it lacks the soul, and it lacks the empathy that makes the shoujo demographic so great. The feeling of wanting to be desired is replaced with a mechanical and functional need to breed for the future of the country, and we're all supposed to laugh along with it. I mean, no matter how you dress it up, doesn't matter whether you go, oh, well, yeah, those shonen rom-coms are great and successful, but we're really a shoujo at heart because we're gonna poke fun at ourselves. Yeah, but none of that's true. Romantic Killer is a shonen being published as a shoujo in the West, and we're told to be happy about that. A little backstory, not a full-on recap of the history of manga, viz, shoujo beat, or even shoujo manga itself, since we'd be here for a few hours, and I'd like to do 2 videos a month. Romantic Killer was published in Shonen Jump's Jump Plus from 2019 until 2020, finishing after 4 volumes, which, for the record, the anime covers incredibly faithfully over its 12 episodes. 2 years later in February, Shojo Beat, which is Viz's North American shoujo line and has been rich with its own controversy this year, if you know anything about editor Nancy telling people to invest in time machines or pay scalper prices, well, they announced that Romantic Killer would be published in Shojo Beat. A shonen manga would be taking one of the less than 10 available spots for the entire imprint and be getting a marketing campaign behind it, the likes of which is only reserved for their biggest franchises. Meanwhile, Snow White with the red hair missed a release date, and the publisher comically shrugged while posting a trailer for Romantic Killer's impending release. As if to twist the knife further and yell screaming with their arms waving that they do indeed care about their shoujo line, an anime would soon be announced later that summer, set to debut in October, getting the full season, multi-language dub, on-release date treatment, and it would be airing on Netflix. Neither Komi, JoJo's, or Beastars got that kind of red carpet treatment. Not only that, but it would also be available digitally on the Shonen Jump app, something very few shoujo series have had the opportunity for. Viz was determined determined to spread the word as much as possible that they have a new star shoujo to parade around, and that shoujo fans should be happy. We should be bowing with reverence that Big Daddy Viz is finally giving us hope, but sadly, it's not that simple. Shoujo fans have it fairly hard, especially online, and especially if you're a woman or femme-presenting person such as myself. Colleen's Manga Recommendations, which is the largest dedicated shoujo YouTuber on the platform, has made numerous videos about the decline of shoujo anime, misogyny in the manga industry, and many more fantastic video essays surrounding manga and anime. I could spend a long time summarizing those videos, but alongside them, the hate comments, other shoujo content creators, and even people like myself who post online with any sort of frequency about it, we can all paint you a really ugly picture of the misogyny, sexism, homophobia, and transphobia that shoujo fans deal with on a fairly regular basis. It's nasty, to say the least. The worst part is that we're already a niche community inside a niche community that's experiencing a massive boom, the likes of which has never been seen before. Since 2020, more people are reading and buying manga than ever before, and when you add that to the increasingly astronomical popularity of anime that is added to this, it's amazing. I love that our community has blossomed into what it is today, but the downside is that with that popularity comes division, condescension, and segregation. People online will actively belittle those that don't follow suit or fall into line with the status quo, and shoujo is a fairly popular punching bag because it's perceived as feminine, girly, and full of romance, much like the Barbie dolls to the shonen's G.I. Joes. It's all ultimately unnecessary, too. So many mangaka were inspired by shoujo manga and would go on to write their own series that would end up being published in shonen or seinen magazines. They'd incorporate storylines, nuances, trademarks, and tropes and would take those to create their own unique stories. But when you get those cannibalistic die-hard shonen fans who spend all their time arguing about which one or two series are the best, which are peak, which are mid, which are L's, which are W's. It's this never-ending cycle of violence within its own community, and there's really no sign of it ever stopping anytime soon. Let's be honest, they aren't really inclined to listen to reason, especially when they refuse to listen to each other. When you factor all of that in with the general disinterest and misinformation surrounding demographics, including the same tired arguments about why was X series considered a seinen when it's obviously a shonen that get paraded around with alarmingly circular frequency, it's tough. Demographics like shonen, seinen, shoujo, and josei exist because of how and where they were published. There's diversity within each demographic, and equating genre with demographic is a problematic but sadly frequent occurrence that puts things in a bubble that people are often happy to stay in. But that creates division and a sense of superiority, and oftentimes as shoujo fans, it feels like we're punching up and told to get out of their, meaning male, space. We're too loud, too combative, we need to calm down and quit complaining when we're being mocked. We just want to be left alone. If you don't like shoujo, that's fine. But going out of your way to belittle us and tell us that our demographic is inferior because it's written for a female audience, it gets tiresome. If you want a recommendation, we'll give it to you, but it's just, at a certain point, it's not worth it to keep fighting. That's why Romantic Killer stings as hard as it does. We're already fighting an uphill battle that seems like it will never end, all for the sake of not being bullied or looked down on for our demographic of choice. When an official company comes in and blurs the lines, it makes it even more frustrating because it muddies the waters and gives dedicated anti-shoujo people, which have popped up with some real furious anger and righteous fervor, the likes of which you'd only see from those right-wing commentary channels or drama channels. It's just free ammunition for them. They could hold the series up in our faces and laugh, daring us to get angry. While other companies like 7 Seas, Yen Press, and the once previously extinct Tokyo Pop are thankfully picking up the slack and giving us hope, Having the largest US manga publisher ignore its imprint, ignore its pleas for reprints, ignore their pleas for more licenses, and then turn around and spoon-feed us a performative shoujo like Romantic Killer, it hurts, because ultimately it's a victim of its own corporate meddling. Had it just been published in Shonen Jump, or through Viz Signature, or its own line like the Disney, Marvel, or Nintendo books, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I would probably be reading the series no problem and consuming it alongside all my other books, and would have watched the anime with some concern given the subject matter, but mostly just shrugged it off, gave it a 6 or 7, and then moved on. But here we are. Maybe this was the plan all along. I've spent 3 weeks consuming, researching, and analyzing everything Romantic Killer in its publishing cycle, and have given it more thought and attention than it probably deserves. Its continued discourse, both positive and negative, continues on all platforms, and now I'm just adding to the machine. The series will continue to release until probably April or May of next year, and if this experiment succeeds, they might try a sequel, or at least a second season of the anime. Honestly, all of this marketing, all of this attention, all of this publishing and pushing, it all feels predetermined and carefully calculated. Maybe we've been onto all along. Alright everybody, that is my first video. My name is Mackenzie, and I love to talk about manga. And, yeah, hopefully you all enjoyed it. I realize this is probably a little bit late to be posting this, and maybe a bit outdated, but ultimately at the end of the day, I wanted to get my thoughts out there, and everybody's got to start somewhere when they're making videos, so I figured I'd start here. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. I do plan on releasing 2 videos a month, and already have about 8 or 9 more planned as we speak. I'm fairly active on Twitter, but all of my social media profiles are at MacLovesManga. And yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and until then, everybody keep reading manga, and I will see you next time.